everybody, and welcome. My name is Milton. I'm an English teacher at British Council Mexico, and I am presenting this week's video session of quick tips for your English classroom. We're doing this as a lead up to the Bbelt conference, which will be happening in February. And the idea is that we give you some quick tips that you can use in your classroom to make your life a bit easier. Today, I hope we have something which I think will be very useful. The focus of today is how to teach speaking. So if we can project the presentation, please, Carlos. Hi, Nai. Nice to meet you. So today we're looking at how to teach speaking. But before we start that, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm Milton. I'm from England. I'm from London. I've been teaching now for 12 years, so quite a long time. And here are some pictures which represent some things about me. In the top photo, you can see me in a boat. This represents my love, my hobby of traveling. One of the fantastic things about living here in Mexico for me as an English person are the amazing places that you can visit. I love going to the beach. I love going into the forest. I love going up the mountain. I love visiting little towns. I love visiting cities. I love it. I'm really happy here in Mexico because of this. On the right, you can see a photo of my dog. Her name is Kiki. She's very, very, very special to me. Kiki is now 3.5 years old, and most of my life revolves around taking Kiki for walks, taking her to the forest, taking her to the Isla de los Leones. So that's probably my biggest hobby at the moment. On the left, you can see my attempt of cooking some frijoles charros, estilo Michoacana. One of my hobbies at the moment is learning how to cook Mexican dishes. I'm following the YouTube series by Doña Ángela, Desde mi rancho a tu cocina. Do you know that? I don't know if you know it, but I love it. I think Doña Ángela is great. I love trying her recipes. And this is my attempt. As you can see, I need some practice, but it was tasty, so I was happy. And finally, the last picture demonstrates something which I would like to share with you about what I specialize in as a teacher. I've been teaching for 12 years. I've got quite a lot of qualifications, and now I'm really focusing on developing with technology. This is probably a specialism of mine. I participate in teacher conferences. I deliver training sessions to teachers here at British Council. And a lot of them are involved around how we can incorporate technology and digital tools into our teaching and students' learning. I think this is the way forward. I think this is one of the big things at the moment. So that's enough about me. If we can go to the next slide, please, Carlos. Thank you. So these are the objectives of today. Excuse me. First, I'm going to discuss a little bit about why we need to teach speaking. It may seem obvious, but I think it's important to cover this ground. I'd also like to highlight some of the obstacles that learners face when learning how to speak. Why is this important? Because if we can understand the obstacles, we can better we can better plan activities and lessons which support students overcome these obstacles or pass these. And finally, I'm going to give you some tips for how to teach fluency and accuracy and how to make it relevant, real, and fun. And finally, as you can see there's a little box of surprises. I'm going to finish the session with a little surprise. So if you stay to the end, you may be pleasantly surprised. Okay, so let's begin. Please, to the next slide, Carlos. What do our students say? So quite recently, we conducted a survey of all our adult students at the British Council Mexico. And what we asked them was, which skill is most important? As you can see, 62% of our students, and this is something like 1,000, say that speaking is the most important for them. Then followed by listening, writing, and reading. Okay, so 62%, that's quite a big majority. Our students think that speaking is the most important. Next slide, please. And this is also what teachers say. Cambridge University conducted a survey of over 2,000 teachers worldwide, not just in Mexico, in Latin America, Central America, North America, Asia, Europe, Africa, around the world, and 70% said that speaking was the most important, followed by listening, writing, and reading. So everybody, teachers and students, think speaking is the most important skill. It's overwhelming. So why does speaking lag behind the other skills? I don't know if you've noticed this in your classroom, but many teachers say that speaking is more difficult to progress in than the other skills. And why is this? Next slide, please. So what are some of the issues that students face? Well, I'm sure many of you have realized that some students get shy or embarrassed when they're speaking English. This is very common. Me, when I'm learning, when I speak Spanish, I get quite embarrassed when I make a mistake, or I get quite shy when I don't know how to say something. This is very common. And this is a serious obstacle in progression. What's another reason? Learners have limited exposure. Okay, so they have limited opportunity to practice, limited opportunity to listen to someone speaking English and to respond. Also, it's clear that not enough time in our classes, maybe not your class, but in general, generally speaking, not enough time in our classes is dedicated to speaking in the curriculum. We should be dedicating minimum 25% to the skill of speaking. Many teachers do too much grammar or too much vocabulary in their classes, and this is useful. I'm not saying don't do this, but it's often confused with a grammar speaking activity with a real life speaking activity. It's not quite the same thing. So there must be more focus on teaching speaking implicitly. Another issue is speaking practice with large classes. Many of you will teach in a secondary or primary school. And I'm sure many of you have this problem where you have, 30 or 40 students in your class, sometimes even more. And it's difficult to practice speaking when you have such big groups. It's difficult to organize activities, to the logistics of it, and the organizing it and managing it. It's not easy. Also, finding topics that will engage students in speaking practice. I mean, sometimes this is obvious. You have a bunch of teenagers and they're all interested in the Minecraft or something like this, and we can talk about Minecraft. But more often than not, it is actually quite challenging to find the right topic that people want to talk about, especially focusing on how we're going to plan a lesson around it. So it's important to get the right topic for learners to speak, the right context. And as kind of similar to the second point I made, many students say, I don't have the opportunity to practice in Mexico. Hopefully, in this presentation, I'm going to demonstrate that this is not true. This is not necessarily true. There are opportunities to practice, maybe not in the traditional way, but in other ways. So that's what I'm going to focus on today. If you can go to the next slide, please. So I'd like to talk a little bit about improving fluency. So a lot of teachers focus on accuracy, which is making sure that students don't make mistakes. But something that we need to recognize is that speaking is messy. Speaking is different to writing in that it's okay to be a bit messy. It's okay to be a little bit incoherent. It's okay to be a little bit incohesive, because that's what speaking is. It's not always well organized. It's not always clear and easy to follow. While we need to strive to improve that, sometimes we just need to focus on allowing students to let go and just let them speak, even if they make mistakes. So some ideas for this is teaching pause fillers. A pause filler are things like, what's that thing called? So in Spanish, this would be the equivalent of este or something like that. Teaching students pause fillers and encouraging them to use it will make those moments of hesitation when they're speaking a bit more natural, and it'll make them feel a bit more comfortable about taking a moment's pause. Another thing that I recommend you teach is vague language. What is vague language? Well, vague language is things like it's like kind of, sort of, something like. So it's kind of difficult, it's sort of difficult, it's something like this. Also things like, if you can't remember a noun, what do you call it? Or if you can't remember, someone's name, what's his name, or what's he called? Things like that. This type of language, while it's a bit informal, which speaking often is useful to help learners deal with situations where they can't remember a word. It allows them to be a bit vague. Speaking doesn't have to be precise like writing does. We can be vague because it's normal. And finally, an idea for you to try out in your classroom to make speaking improving fluency fun is verbal boxing. I'm sure many of you in your classrooms, you try debate activities, but have you tried making the debate activity into a competition? How can we do this? Well, put the class into 2 teams, team 1, team 2. In each team, they elect a boxer. Obviously, they're not going to box for real. It's going to be speaking boxing. The teacher provides some topics, and the 2 different teams help prepare their boxer to discuss in the debate. So the team prepare the boxer with arguments, with ideas, with counter arguments and things like that. And then after that, you hold 3 or 4 rounds. Each round is on a different topic, and they debate backwards and forwards after they have prepared with their trainers, and then finally, while this is happening, you have a judge panel, and the judge panel will grade the students, the 2 boxers, in terms of their language, in terms of their arguments, in terms of their fluency, whatever you want to mark on. But it adds an element of competition to the debate activity, which can be very motivating. It can be very fun. So that's one idea for improving fluency. If you go to the next slide, please. Improving accuracy. Now, there are many activities to improve accuracy, so I thought I'd focus on one that maybe you haven't heard of, or maybe you haven't used. Something that I like very much is using the speech-to-text transcription tools. What is transcription? Is when you write what somebody has said, okay? In the past, people used to listen and then write it down, but now we have these automatic apps or functions which do that for us. Here, I've circled one which is in Word. Of course, on our mobile phones, we have it. Why is this a good activity? Because, well, you can ask a student to prepare a presentation and deliver the presentation with this speech-to-text transcription tool. The student can then look at their text and they can analyze it for themselves. Now, they'll need a bit of training for this, so you need to support them. You need to provide some scaffolding. But it's a really good way to promote learner autonomy, a really good way to support students identify their own mistakes. It also raises awareness of slips. A slip is a mistake that a student probably knows it's a mistake, but doesn't notice that they're making it. This is common, for example, in present simple third person, not using the S. So if you have an intermediate student who does this, they probably know that it's a mistake, but sometimes they forget when they're speaking. Well, this tool helps them identify that they're doing it quite a lot. Sometimes the teacher will say this, of course, but it's always better if you notice yourself. The other thing I like about this is that it encourages learners to reprocess output. What does that mean? They will look at their presentation, they will see their mistakes, and they'll want to do it again. Repetition of activity is usually very useful for speaking because you want to improve each time you do it. And this, what I really, really like about this activity as well is that students can also analyze the current output and the desired output. What do I mean by that? So you can, as the teacher, you can provide a model of an activity. You can do a presentation using all the language that you focused on in the course. The students can do a presentation using what they can, And then the students can analyze in a written form what the teacher said or what the proficient speaker said and what they are saying. It's much easier to analyze when it's written down than when you're just listening to yourself say something. So this is an idea. Next slide, please. I also think it's very important to make it real. Make these activities, allow these activities reflect something that they have to do in real life. So an idea that I'd like to share with you is recording calls and online activities. There are some great apps you can download where you can record telephone calls. Now, I think this is very useful, for example, with my business students. They have to make a lot of calls in English. So what I think is very good, if they do an activity where they speak to their partner, they record it, and then they can listen to their recording. The only thing you have to be a bit careful with this is you need to make sure you have the permission of the other person. So either do this in class or make sure the students tell the person they're speaking to on the phone that they're recording them, okay? Because you must ask for permission. It's very important. But also we have desktop recorders. What are desktop recorders? These are apps where you can record what is happening on your screen. So if you're online on Zoom or on Teams or on Google Classroom or whatever it is, and you're doing some sort of conference activity, some sort of speaking activity online, you can use a desktop recorder to record it. And then you can record it, you can listen back to it, you can watch it again. The students can watch it as many times as they like, and they can analyze for themselves what they're doing wrong or what they want to do better at. If you can start collecting a record of these, so you have, I don't know, 10 recordings over the space of a year, they should be able to see progress with each recording. And this is very motivating to see that you're improving with your speaking. So it's motivating and it promotes learner autonomy. Next slide, please. Let's make it fun as well. Many of you teach young learners, and even if you don't, this is a fun idea. There are some great apps for using green screen. This green screen is this thing which is common in television, of course, where you have some green behind you, and you can edit whatever appears behind you. So I've done some very interesting activities with my teenagers, where they have to, for example, they have to do an interview on a volcano. So they put a green screen behind them and they interview each other. One pretends to be the scientist, the volcanologist, and one pretends to be the journalist, and they do an interview about the volcano or something like that. And it's very fun because it adds a bit of an element of you know, like a reality to it or whatever. But it's fun. It can also be set for homework. You know, you can get them to do this. It allows kind of creativity. You can choose all types of context, and it's very fun. And it's actually very easy online. I'm sure many of you have noticed that in Zoom, in Google Classroom, in Teams, and all of these, you can select your background. So perhaps you get a picture of, I don't know, of you in the forest or you in the jungle, and then you can, you know, record a video of your survival techniques or whatever it may be. It just adds an element of fun to the class, and it's very engaging for learners. So I highly recommend it. And next class, please. And that's the end. So I've tried to focus on 4 main tips for improving speaking. I've tried to cover why it's important to teach speaking and some problems that students have when learning how to speak. Here's a moment where I'd like to hear from you. Do you have any questions or comments about what we've covered today? If you do, please write them in the chat. And I'm looking at the chat now. I can see some people like Kiki. Oh, thank you, Evelyn. Thank you, Casa de Idiomas. These are my little my little dog. But yes, do you have any questions about teaching how to speak? Let me just have a look. Any questions about how to teach speaking? Do you like these ideas? Do you think they're useful? Will you use them in your class? Hi, Beatriz. Hi, Maria. Hi, Casa de Idiomas. Hi, Veronica. And Veronica says, everything has been so clear and useful. I'm glad, Veronica. Thank you very much. I I hope you can use some in your classroom. I hope some are useful. Veronica says, maybe you meant sure? Sure, yeah. Yeah. Okay, Veronica, great. Okay. Well, we have 2 or 3 minutes left of the video. Oh, Arturo says brilliant tips. Great, Arturo. Nice to see you again. I'm glad that you found these useful. We have 2 or 3 more minutes. So if you still have a question, don't worry. I'll respond to it. And even if we finish, we can get back to it. Beatrice says how to improve students to speak. Well, I hope, Beatrice, some of these tips will help you. I tried to cover like 4 areas, which I think is very important. So the first area was focusing on fluency. So allowing learners just to speak and not focus on mistakes. Let them speak, let them get it out. Then you can focus on accuracy. Tell them how to improve, tell them how to correct some of the mistakes they're making. Give them the tools to be able to correct themselves. Then making it real. It's important that activities reflect something that you have to do in real life. This is fun and this is engaging. And then finally, making it fun. It's important to add maybe an element of creativity. It's important to add maybe an element of competition. And so, for example, the green screen app idea hopefully provided some answers to that. If you can share some other ideas for young learners. Yeah, so young learners is an interesting area to how to improve speaking. I think one of the most important things for young learners, in my opinion, Veronica, is adding some element of reward system. Okay, so you can set up an activity and you can reward students by, I don't know, giving them a sticker or by ticking on the board every time they use something. So, for example, you want to teach them how to use functions to how to give their opinion. So, in my opinion, I don't think, I do think, or whatever it may be. Each time they use one of those phrases, maybe you give them a sticker or you give them a tick. And at the end of the activity, the student with the most ticks gets a sticker or gets a, whatever the prize might be, gets to choose a song that the class will listen to, gets to choose an activity that they'll play next. So adding competition is very good for improving speaking. The other thing, Veronica, I suggest is finding the right topic. I think it's really important to find the right topic. You've got to find something that students are interested in. So I'm going to kind of combine this question with Barbara's question. Barbara says, teenagers are hard students. How can I encourage them? Yes, I agree. They are hard students. I think you need to find things where there is some sort of, again, some sort of completion, some sort of reward. Something that I did recently, which worked very, very well for teenage students, was trying online breakout rooms. If you just search in Google, free online escape rooms, not breakout rooms, excuse me, escape rooms. An escape room are these places in the city where you can go and you have to solve some puzzles to escape. Well, actually, since the pandemic, there's been huge amounts of people who have programmed online escape rooms. So I think this would be a very, very good idea. This is a very fun activity to do. I played these escape rooms with my family when I was speaking to them online during the pandemic, and it was really fun. And I tried it with teenagers, and they loved it. They wanted to do another one and another one, and then because it was so popular, we made a project after that on them programming their own escape room. And this led to loads of natural speaking opportunities where they were working as a team, they were constructing something, they were, negotiating, all sorts of things. And then they presented it. And it was really, really successful. So I think basically what I'm trying to say is you need to find something which is engaging for them, fun for them. Think about music, think about computer games, think about activities that they do with their friends. If you can find something which is fun for them, that would be great. I hope that helps a bit. Oh, our daughter says having learners create a podcast has been really motivating. Yeah, this is similar to what I was saying earlier about the escape rooms. podcast. Many teenagers listen to podcasts now. There's so many podcasts directed at kind of different age levels, and it's great for them to practice their listening skills. Now, as Arturo says, it's very easy to create your own podcast, and what's really great about it is that it allows for a lot of creativity. They have to do a lot of planning. They have to work as a team. It's all these kind of 21st century skills which are involved in a project like that. So yeah, Arturo, great idea. Have learners create a podcast. The most difficult ability to teach and evaluate is writing. What do you suggest to improve writing? Well, today's about speaking, Francesco. Maybe I can do writing next week. But let me give you a couple of very, very quick tips. Try using a correction code. What does that mean? So instead of correcting it for them, just give some symbols. So for example, if it's a mistake with a verb, if it's a conjugation mistake, write conj. If it's a tense mistake, write t. If it's a spelling mistake, write sp. And students have to edit their own work. This is a very useful tip for writing. Maybe I can focus on some more next week. Have learners. At what point is it convenient to start working on accuracy with young learners who are a very basic level? This is a good question. Very good question. I think I don't really focus so much on accuracy with young learners at all, actually. I start to focus more on accuracy when they're teenagers. What I do with young learners before they're teens, like kind of before 12 or 13, is I do a lot of echo correction. What's that? When if somebody makes a mistake, I just rephrase it for them in a subtle way. So if somebody says, yesterday I go to school, I say, oh, you went to school. And it's a subtle way of correcting them. I think that's what I do. I mean, we focus on some grammar, of course, with young learners. But instead of kind of, really focusing on them correcting it themselves, I just kind of correct it for them in a subtle way. And I give them activities where they have to say it correctly. And then also reward them when they say it correctly. Reward systems are great. You use this structure perfectly. Well done. Here's a tick, or here's a star, or here's a sticker. But I think it's important to not focus too much on accuracy when they're young learners, because you don't want to demotivate them. You don't want them to create a sense of embarrassment about English. The most important thing is to encourage them to speak as much as possible. So GPE, I hope that gives some. That's my opinion. I hope that was useful. So thank you very much for your questions. I'm glad we got a few in. I hope it was useful. Can we go to the next slide, please, Carlos? I'd like to talk a little bit about Bbelt. I'm sure many of you know Bbelt stands for the best and brightest of English language teaching. It is a teaching conference which we hold every year. Normally it's in the Hilton, but unfortunately because of the pandemic now it's online. But it has turned out to be a great experience online, and we really get some of the most amazing teachers from Mexico and from around the world come and deliver and participate and interact. And it's such a great experience. I've been going for the last 6 years, and every year I meet someone new. I see a talk which I find interesting, and it's for me it's the event in the year for teaching English in Mexico. It's a great opportunity to network, to meet people from around the country, and you get some ideas that will stick with you for the rest of your life. At the beginning of my language teaching career, I went to some conferences, and I still use many of the tips that I learned in those conferences. The great thing about Bbelt is that it's not only just for kind of teachers, it's also great for managers. It's also great for decision makers, people who are deciding on materials to use or whatever it may be. It's a great place to network. So if you stayed to the end of this talk, the final slide, please. This is the surprise. We have a Bbelt promotion if you are interested in joining. So here you can see it's in Spanish, but because you watched this series of quick tips, we have a present for you. If you buy one ticket for Bbelt 22, you will receive the second completely free to invite whoever you want. A nice Christmas present for whoever you want. Okay, so you can validate this promotion following these steps: going to Bbelt, registering the second individual, registering the first individual, excuse me, using the code, and then registering the second individual. So I hope that you find that's a nice gift for you. Okay, so again, thank you very, very, very much for joining me today. I hope you have some nice ideas to take away with you. Well, thank you, Veronica. Thank you. Thanks, Veronica. Oh, and the other Veronica. Next week we'll be doing another one. If you have something that you really need some help with, you really need some ideas for your English classroom, please write it in the chat. I'll be looking at the chat after. And if you have some great ideas that you'd like me to focus on next week, please put your suggestions there. We'll be having one next week and then in January as well, and every week in the lead up to Bbelt. Okay, so that's it from me today. Thank you very, very much for coming and see you next week. Okay, goodbye.